Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. My name is Aldas Kriauciunas. I'm the Executive Director of Purdue's Executive MBA programs. Today, we want to review the two programs we have, answer your questions. And to help me with that, we have one of our faculty joining, Professor Mary Pilotte. If you'd like to say hi, Mary.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to have you online. My name's Mary Pilotte. I'm an Associate Professor of Engineering Practice, and I'm also the instructor of the ALP class.
So we'll be asking Mary to provide some of her perspectives from the faculty, and one of our alums, or almost alums, should be joining us any moment as well. So you have multiple options to be choosing from as you look at EMBA options. And here we just look at the whole universe if you want to build upon your work experience and stay employed as you go through an MBA program. Certainly there are online options available to you as noted here, but you really don't interact much with people. And if you realize that a lot of your learning can be from peers, then this may not be the right program for you. The weekend or evening format are the most common. There at least you do meet people in the classroom. However, there tends to be limited outside of the classroom interaction. And second, because of the frequency of travel to campus, most people will live somewhat locally, so you may not get as much of a diverse perspective from people in the class. The most rare format is the one that we have, and there's about a dozen programs in the world that follow a residency format. In this particular approach, you come to campus less frequently, but when you do come, it is for a longer period of time, 1 or 2 weeks at a time. This approach gives you a lot more flexibility between the times on campus for work or travel. Also lets us pull from a much broader geographic range. People can and do live anywhere in the world as they go through our and other residency programs. And then when we do come together, it's not just for a day or an evening, but it is for a longer period of time, such that when classes end, 4:30 or 5 o'clock, we stay together as a cohort. You may work on a case study, on a project, maybe go out for dinner, and those ties that bind, that bring you together, will continue 24/7. You have that interaction, and so you're learning not just from faculty, but from others in the classroom as well, and that's really the strength of the residency approach. In terms of looking at Purdue, we're approaching our 150th anniversary. We're really excited about that. And so within that, founded as a land-grant university, strong ties to the community, to businesses, really looking at what can help people as they move forward. Part of the Big Ten, 500,000 alumni around the world, almost 50,000 Cranard alumni, about 3,000 executive ed alumni. So keeping in mind that your cohort may be 25 or 30 people, but you're part of this much broader Purdue family with alumni chapters across the U.S. and in 50 countries around the world. So you're part of a very large network that you'd be joining by coming to our program. And as we move forward through the slides today, just covering some of the main questions that people have as they're considering an EMBA program. What are the fellow classmates like? Talking about this particular format of blended learning that we have, and then looking at some next steps that may be of interest to you should this program be the right fit for you. So looking here at just some of the companies represented over the past couple of years in our program, I like to ask people, do you see a theme? And the theme is that there is no theme, meaning it can be any industry, any company. We have finance, we have technology, oil and gas, consumer products, not-for-profits, pharmaceutical, military, and more. And so because, again, people can be anywhere in the world, really what brings them together is having this common work experience of having dealt with managerial and or leadership responsibilities and wanting to look for new opportunities as they move forward in their career. Here I'd like to go over a rolling 3-year average of what the cohorts have been like. And then we'll have our alum, Freddy Horn, give us a little bit more on his background as well. but we require a minimum of 5 years excuse me, work experience, since we see at that point is when people start having more management and or leadership responsibilities. No maximum, of course, of work experience. The positions people are in very much track the work experience from middle manager on up. Again, it's not concentrated of just junior people or just people at 5 years, but spread out at different stages of people's careers. No one industry dominating, so again, a nice balance of different industries. And then we see about a quarter of our students from Indiana, about a quarter international, and then the rest spread throughout the United States. With that, I'd like to have Freddy Horn. He is, I can't say already alum, but he has graduation in 2 weeks. So he's as close as one can be to an alum without having a diploma. So Freddy, good to see you. If you could introduce yourself and tell people a bit about yourself.
And hello, everyone. My name is Freddy Horn. As Aldas said, I will graduate hopefully in 1 week, 2 weeks actually. So it has come very quickly. I'm German. I live and work in Germany. I graduated from the University of Passau in Germany, and the degree I had was a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and Economics. And yes, I joined the Purdue EMBA program, the global EMBA program 2 years ago, and am now starting to look forward to my graduation in 2 weeks.
Excellent. And in terms of what industry you work in, if you could share a little bit on that.
Sure. I work for a company called Darling Ingredients, and we produce different types of natural ingredients, such as proteins, fats, minerals. We're in a traditional B2B industry environment, so we sell to a lot of the companies that have famous brands that you guys probably know of, Kraft Foods, different brands, also pharmaceuticals, Pfizer in the United States. We are a U.S. company listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and I've been working for this company for quite some time. It's been 7 years now, and before I started this MBA program, I was responsible for the purchase of raw material in our business region in Germany. I was head of purchase, and just recently I got promoted into a managing director position. Actually, the day I left my last residency for Purdue was the first day of my new job, so things have changed quickly recently.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And as Freddie noted, his education, so we see about 40% of our students have a engineering technology background, about 35% management, economics, or business, and about 25% a humanities background. So there's no set background in terms of education to join our program, but very much is what have you done since graduation and how the MBA may help you move forward in your career. As we've seen with Freddie, it already has having an impact, and he doesn't have the diploma yet. But I'm confident you will. We'll ask Freddie more questions. Certainly, please, people participating today, feel free to use the text messaging or unmute your mic, and we can pose questions. Here, I'd like to go over a bit of the curriculum, then I'll ask Professor Pilotte to weigh in a little bit. So ours is a general management MBA program because we feel the general manager needs to have an array of understanding and skills in different areas of the firm to be successful in her or his role. It may be to ask better questions, maybe prevent mistakes, maybe put the right people on the team, but again, it's trying to improve that overall performance. So we split our courses into three main groupings. This is for our, what I call our traditional executive MBA. Curriculum is very similar to the global executive MBA that Freddie is graduating from. So we have the classic functional courses. These are those very topic-specific classes of what you need to understand for a business. We have the environmental area within which a firm is competing and operating. It could be a for-profit firm. It could be a not-for-profit. Every organization has competition. They may not all be profit-seeking, but they all have KPIs that they're trying to achieve. And then the integrative topics. They build from the functional and environmental and add their own concepts and understanding. These tend to be the most complicated or complex topics because you're building from and adding a dynamic element into what a organization should be doing. So, as Professor Pilotte indicated, she works primarily on one of the integrative courses, the active learning consulting projects, helping build a foundation of project management skills and then guiding students on their actual projects. So, Professor Pilotte, if you could share a little bit from the faculty side, how do you find it different working with executive MBA students versus maybe undergraduate? And what is it that very much interests you about this type of a program?
Well, everything's different teaching executives, I think, versus undergraduates, because students, the adult learners, have so much more to bring to the classroom. And so one thing I would say to prospective students is you'll have a better experience when you bring the whole entirety of yourself to the classroom. An MBA is quite different than an undergraduate experience. Perhaps it's been a while since you were an undergrad, and you could enter the classroom and kind of sit there and maybe, you know, have the education thrust upon you. The MBA is quite different. I think Freddy would hop in there and agree with me in that it is an active sport and it's a team sport, and it requires full-on engagement, certainly in the active learning project for sure. I enjoy being part of the MBA program because for me, it allows me to stay connected with the relevant topics that are going on in industry. You all become my subject matter experts. I spent 25 years in industry, and so the MBA, the Executive MBA and the Global MBA are ways for me to stay connected to industry, which is so important to me. And so that it's kind of a virtuous cycle. It helps me also relate what's important to my undergraduate students as well, because I teach in both areas. So I just enjoy adult learners and kind of the wisdom and the maturity that they bring to the classroom, and I certainly encourage you as colleagues in a cohort to share those experiences and that wisdom with each other, because as Aldas referred to earlier, there's more to an MBA program than just what you learn in the classroom. Your colleagues are teaching you every day about all sorts of things, from industry sector insider information into maybe challenging you to be a better teammate or a better leader. And so it's really the holistic experience that will really be of most benefit to you in a program like what Purdue offers.
Thank you. So here I'd like to go over the format a little bit, and then Freddie, I'm going to have you comment on a few things that are, I think, very unique to our approach. So both of our programs are 19 months from when you first step onto campus to when you submit your last final exam. We begin with an orientation here at Purdue University. During that time, you meet the members of your cohort, of your first study team, which the program forms the study teams to make them diverse yet balanced. You learn about the technology we use in the classroom, given some of the materials and the readings and books are ebooks and online. And then you take 2 class sessions for each of the courses of the first module. With that foundation set, go home, and then we have the pre-residency period, or online. During this time, you're watching videos faculty have prepared, doing readings. You'll have individual and team-based assignments, and typically a weekly team meeting as well. So really, this is giving you that sort of introduction to the material, fairly interactive, but it's not synchronous, meaning you don't have to log in every Tuesday at 8 p.m. to listen to a lecture, but you go through some of the work individually, some within your team, but you have weekly deadlines that you submit, and then faculty review and give you feedback on them. So we have that foundation building for when you come to campus. When you come to campus, we'll see a typical schedule, but you have, of course, the classes, the classroom learning immersion, company visits, guest speakers to complement what's happening in the classroom. We provide career management support during your time in the program, and then social or outside the classroom organized activities. It could be a city tour, it could be a basketball game, and sometimes it's both. Here, if I'm not mistaken, the photo, Freddy, you're at the very top of the stairs, I believe, when they were in Chile visiting a winery to complement the marketing class that you had, correct?
That is correct, yes. We visited Casillero Diabolo, one of the most famous wineries in Chile. It was a very nice tour. The wine was nice too, I must admit.
But that's where, to us, it is that combining those different elements. We'll talk more about the residencies, but I think Freddy would agree. It's not a tourism trip. It's not sightseeing. He's working hard. The whole cohort is working hard at each of these residencies. With that set within the residency, you go home. You have a week to prepare for final exams. And the exams are done over a 9-day period. They're done online. And here also you choose when you take which exam. They're typically timed 2 or 3 or 4 hours. You download the exam, the clock starts ticking, you answer, and then you upload it. So again, you have that flexibility within the exam period. After exams, you'll typically have a 1-week break, and then you'll start the next pre-residency with new study teams. Here as well, we form the new study teams to have that diversity yet balance for you, and we change them during each of the modules. One thing to note is we always introduce the teams when you're still in residency together so that you can compare schedules and talk about how you're going to coordinate the pre-residency work. So a first question for Freddy. Most people when they hear online, they think, I'm on my own, there's no interaction. Could you talk from the student, from the participant perspective, what that pre-residency experience was like?
Yeah, I think you summarized it quite nicely when you said that the pre-residency is really about delivering the most important theories and concepts so you are able to learn in residency and contribute to those discussions in residency. The pre-residency portion and work depends a little bit on the course. Each professor has a different style, but usually you do watch your videos, regular videos, usually 1 video per week. You have assigned readings, and you can do this at your own pace. Whenever you have time, you can watch the videos or do your readings. But then there are also written assignments that keep you on track and make sure that you stay on schedule and do your work. But what I really enjoyed was the study teams. As Mary also said, the group itself is a very diverse group with great work experience. So the discussions that you have with the cohort add a lot to the overall learning experience. I think I learned a lot from my other fellow students. They come from different industries, and as you all know, when you work for a company, you usually talk to your own colleagues, customers, suppliers, and you always talk about the same things, and you always have the same mindset. But here you have those discussions with people from such diverse backgrounds, and it adds a lot. And in the pre-residency phase, each team is responsible for setting up their own meetings and their own agendas for the meetings. But as I said, there are certain assignments, also team assignments, and they make sure that you have to deliver some of the work on time and to a certain quality aspect as well. So this was always a very interesting and good opportunity to combine the theory of reading with engagement and interaction with your fellow students. And there are some courses that request more teamwork and there are other courses that request less, but in general, it's always a good balance. And as I said, you get to learn the theories behind the classes in the pre-residency phase, and then you're prepared to go to the residency.
Okay, thank you. And then jumping to the exam period, because here as well, most people probably for your undergraduate and people joining our webinar today, they think of exams as everyone going into one classroom and taking an exam together, which of course is not at all the case. So could you kind of talk how that experience was different in how you managed it?
Yeah, I think it's similar to the pre-residency phase where you have a certain deadline and you have to hand in your certain paper or your work for that deadline. And the exam period is similar. So you come back from the residency phase, you learn a lot in the residency and you're well prepared for the exams. But at the same time, you still have to review your notes. You still have to study for those exams. You might have to work on some of the things that you did not quite understand in the residency and then do some exercises. So you can do this at your own pace and depending on where you think you still need to work and improve your knowledge. And then when you think you're ready for the exam, you can log on a SharePoint site and there is an exam uploaded. As soon as you click on the exam, there is a time counting down and you have, depending on the exam, between 2 to 4 hours. And you have to finish all the questions within that time and you upload the final exam and yeah, you're done. So it's on the one hand very convenient, so you can take the exam when you actually have time. But then the exam period is only 1 week, so from one weekend to the other weekend. So you also have to make sure that you do take the exams on time and you do spend enough time to study and prepare for the exams. And when you start to download that exam and when you work on it, it is actually quite nervous, or it makes you as a student quite nervous because you see that time is ticking and you have prepared well for the exam, but still it is an exam, so you have to make sure that you do well and stay focused and concentrated and finish your exam on time.
Excellent, thank you. So looking at our two programs, a bit of a compare and contrast. So again, I think it's Freddy's cohort in Milan. They were the first cohort to go to Milan. So I think that also reflects that we keep trying to adjust our locations, keep making the curriculum both relevant and new, depending on what we believe managers need. So both our programs are a general management MBA program. Admissions requirements are the same for both. We provide the career management, networking. Both have the ALP project that Professor Pilotte runs, and then cohort-based electives where we adjust the curriculum based on where we think the cohort may benefit the most. In terms of differences, so with the what I'm going to call traditional EMBA, because for most people it does seem more traditional to come to the same campus each time. We come for the traditional 1-5 times to West Lafayette. The last time we come together, it is an international residency. In here we have an additional number of workshop-style electives where you help to generate ideas for these electives. In the global program, we have 5 residencies of 2 weeks each. We go to 7 countries. For some countries, such as Netherlands, US, and China, we spend 2 weeks there. And then for the 2 other residencies, we have Milan with Lithuania, we have Brazil with Chile, where we pair up 2 countries. Definitely, you're gaining the cultural immersion and business immersion by pairing up the companies and what we're doing in the cities to the curriculum. And here also you earn 2 MBA degrees, one from Purdue and one from our Dutch partner, TIAS. So here's a quick map of where we go in our partner schools for the IMM Global Executive MBA program. So we have, of course, Purdue University. We have FGV Abape down in Rio. We have our 3 partners in Europe. We have ISM in Lithuania, MIP Politecnico di Milano in Italy, and TIAS in the Netherlands, forming a nice triangle across the EU. And then we have our Tianjin University partner in China. So looking at the order of residencies, it's actually changed, I believe, since Freddy went through the program. And so we have launch week, of course, here at Purdue. In our first 2 residencies, we go to 3 corners, if you will, of the EU, giving a nice contrast across different business models, different times when countries have entered the EU, from Northern Europe, Southern Europe, and then transitional economy of Lithuania. We then go to South America, and that takes people a little bit further out of their comfort zone. So we're going to Brazil and Chile, and a significant contrast of economies between the two countries. We then come to Purdue University. Culturally, it's not a stretch for most people, but the curriculum gets more difficult, I would say, because we have more integrative courses. And then we end with our time in China, certainly culturally, taking people furthest out of their comfort zone and ending the program on that note. Question, Freddy, for you so you went through all these countries, a little bit different order, as I mentioned. Any residency stands out, or maybe I'll start with that first question. Favorite memory or favorite couple memories from the 7 countries you went to?
It's difficult to say. I think we had there are always great memories in each of those countries, and what I liked was the combination of the classroom experience, but also the visits, the company visits that we had with guest speakers from those countries. So you really get a very good insight into that country. You only spend 1 or maximum 2 weeks there, but you get a very good understanding of that country and what it is like to do business in such an environment. And so that was, I think, that was the same for all of the residencies. They were planned very well. But I think I personally enjoyed those the most that I expected the least from, and one would be Brazil. I thought Brazil is a fun country and a great holiday destination, but I really enjoyed the whole immersion. I enjoyed the company visits and the overall experience that was phenomenal. And then I would say Lithuania as well is on top of my list. Usually Lithuania would not be that country that you would pick for a holiday destination or a business venture. It's a European country that does not get a lot of publicity. And I think it was not only myself who felt that way, but also most of my fellow students in the program. But it was just such a great experience. We had great immersion, and we had great guest speakers. One of them was a former Secretary of State of the country, an ambassador. We had an entrepreneur coming in. We had the CEO of Lithuania's energy company. So high caliber guest speakers. That was just very, very interesting for us. It added a lot to the overall learning, but also the social aspect. I fell in love with Lithuanian food, and all this, we've been joking about this quite some time. But that was just a surprising experience for me, and I enjoyed it a lot.
We do try to, again, make sure there is that learning component, but maybe going to places that aren't always the first destination that people would do for a holiday. And again, it stretches your understanding of what is possible and what business may be like around the world. Here's a typical week in our program. So we'll have 2 90-minute classes in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, typically a different topic between the morning and the afternoon. That Sunday, we had our walking tour in Milan. Then we try to have a guest speaker that first day of the week to give a bit of cultural business context. And then when we were there in October, we went to Cimbali, espresso machine manufacturer. So when people think of Italy, many do think of espresso. So it certainly made sense. But understanding how they compete with companies that are much, much larger than them, higher volumes, lower cost, but they find that niche of quality and service, and they have that global reach. And then seeing how that operates, their business model, and tying it to the operations class that we had that week. Here I'll mention as well, you'll see that we have breaks built into the morning and the afternoon and during lunch as well. And that's because people within the residency, they still have some minimal expectation from their company to be checking emails or responding to calls. And so we want to make sure people have that time. In fact, so Freddy, from your perspective, I assume you weren't able to shut away from all work responsibilities during each residency. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you can prepare as much as possible, and of course, before you go on your residency experience, you talk to your colleagues and your team, and you try to delegate as much as possible, so you have enough time to focus on the studying. But things always happen, and surprises happen, and I think it was in the orientation we gave, and I think Aldas and we had lunch, and then I received a phone call that we had a quite horrible accident in one of our plants, and I had to get involved, and these things happen. And I think everybody who wants to do an executive MBA program should know what to expect. It is tough to really balance your work and the studying, and I think the program gives as much flexibility as possible, so you can really combine these two things: the work, the studying, and of course, family is also important. So you should not. You should also make sure that you spend enough time with your family and your friends. But the program does allow you a lot of flexibility. But in the end, there will always be some email coming through or something happening, and that will call your attention. And then you have to also deal with that during the residency phase or while you work on an assignment.
Okay, thank you. So this bubble chart seeks to capture some of the main components that people have indicated are important to them. So we look at affordability and alumni network because you are joining not just the cohort, but that whole university. And then the color or shading around the circle captured the format. And then the number or the size of the bubble captures the number of countries that we go to. So based at least on these 4 criteria, we do go to more countries than any other global executive MBA program. And as Freddy agreed, it's not a sightseeing tour. You are working hard during these trips, really getting that immersion aspect. But we try to do it at an affordable approach, but also as you become an alum of the program, you have that global network, at least for Purdue, that you can reach out to. We have our then traditional executive MBA. It starts every September. Again, launch week here at Purdue University. The first 2 residencies are 2 weeks each. Then numbers 3, 4, and 5 are 1 week each, so they're a bit shorter. Because of that, the credit load is a bit lower. For the global EMBA that Freddy is graduating from, I tell people to plan about 20 hours per week when they're not on campus. Would you agree with that, or would your experience be a little bit different?
Yeah, I think it depends. I would say it's a bit more at the beginning of the program.
Fair enough.
It's the program and the workload gets a bit lighter during the program, and then gets more intense again towards the end of the program. I would say 30 hours in module 1, but then around 20 or even below 20 in module 2, module 3, and then it picks up again.
Okay. And part of that module 1 is as well people learning to be students again after having been away for anywhere from 5 to 30 years from being a student. Here with the traditional executive MBA, a bit more front-loaded, residencies 1 and 2, about 25 hours per week, and then it drops to about 15 to 17 in the remaining weeks when you're, again, not on campus. And here with this bubble chart, again, looking at similar components, affordability and alumni network still very important. And then the size of the bubble here, looking at the number of electives. So again, we provide a fair number within the EMBA. And one thing to note for both programs, the electives that we have, it's only for our students in the program. So we don't put our students, Freddy wasn't put into some other program to take a class, and we didn't bring in people from the outside, particularly because that peer-to-peer learning is a critical part of our program. It's a philosophy. If you just want to show up to class and listen and never contribute, well, this isn't the right program for you, because it is that peer-to-peer learning that's critical, but so valuable. It is very valuable. Freddie talked about that. 20 different industries representing the cohort, different approaches. and I'll put Freddy on the spot without asking him a question. I've gotten to know Freddy, I think. Freddy has a particular way to approach problems, I think. But I'm sure more than once during discussions, he listened to a solution thinking, I never would have thought of that, or not what I would expect, but it also forced him to rethink some of his own positions. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, and I think it did not only happen in class and during the MBA program, but it actually taught me to apply the same concepts at work. I think I spend a lot more time with my team really looking at a problem from different perspectives and then making a decision and not going into a discussion with a certain solution or a certain path that you want to take. And I think that is one of the big things I learned in this program, to always keep an open mind and really evaluate and appreciate what other people have to contribute, and then make a decision and not go into the discussion with an already made decision.
Excellent. It took me, I think, 20 more years to learn that than it took you, so you're ahead. So looking at the cost aspect for the program, so both programs are priced at the same amount, and they're both all-inclusive. Tuition fees, course materials, housing, either in West Lafayette or any of our international residencies that we go to. Once you're within the program, we provide transportation. So when we flew from Rio to Santiago, that was covered. Between Lithuania and Italy, it is covered, that type of travel. And then these other elements as well. Our goal is to make it all inclusive instead of nickel and diming you, as some programs do. They have an official price, and then you end up spending almost that much on these other extras. So really, you have to get to and from campus, some of the meals, and there may be a visa application fee. And same tuition, $85,000, both spread into 5 payments of $17,000, spread across multiple years that you're in the program. So we talked about benefits to the firm because if you're doing this program, your firm has to know. You can't leave every 3 months for a week or two and just say you're on holiday. I'm not sure people will believe that necessarily. So you need their support, certainly. So the benefits, certainly the coursework, the fact that after each residency, you can already be implementing ideas. And sometimes it's going to be a very clear connection to a course, or sometimes it may be, as Freddy's example, more of a journey. You change internally, you learn to do things in a different way. It may not be that, on a particular day you had an innovation idea, but you approach things and make you a better manager, a better colleague, a better employee of the company. We continue to work with you to provide you with continuing education opportunities, both online and here on campus. And then the networking, I'm going to have Freddy comment on that as well from a student perspective. And I want to mention it because when people think of networking, many think of some calculated approach, or their assumption is, I'm sure I'm going to get to know new people. What's the big deal? And I think in the IMM, the Global MBA, and the traditional, the fact that you're together for 1 or 2 weeks at a time creates a different type of interaction than if you just saw people every other Saturday. And everyone that joins our programs knows they're going to meet new people. I think they're surprised at how close those ties are that form. So, Freddy, as you're wrapping up the program, can you kind of compare and contrast what you thought was going to happen on meeting people and what the reality was like?
I must say I actually expected to engage with the students at a very high and also high level, and also all the time and during the residency. Before I started this EMBA program, I did an executive education program at INSEAD in France. It was a 2-week program, and it was the same concept. So there was the same group of people for 2 weeks, and we all worked together. And I'm still friends with those people, and therefore I knew that if I would go into an EMBA program that also has 2-week residencies, and you go through this program with the same group of people, those these networks will even be more intense. And this is exactly what happened. You see the same people all the time. You engage with them online and offline. You have dinner with them. You talk to them. You have at times stupid discussions. At times you have intellectual discussions. It all happens. And it does really bring the group together. And I would now consider most of those people not only fellow graduates and students, but part of my friends, and I think they would say the same thing. We're in contact, and we also plan to stay in contact for a long time. And I think if there's something I would need from them, an idea or a contact, or maybe some networking on their side, I would not hesitate to ask them, and I do not think they would hesitate to ask me. It's just very open. It's a very open discussion that we always have, and it's a good friendship.
Okay, thank you. And for a question for Professor Pilotte as well, because you work with the students towards the end of their time in the program, how do you see that networking, those bonds that have formed, how did that come into the project work that you're dealing with? Because the ALP is probably the most intense in terms of group work of any of the courses that we have.
So I think by the time that they reach the ALP project, they've been in several different teams. So I think their expectations for how to manage this team dynamic is much better, albeit in the ALP, it's a very intense experience. And so what I see is across teams, people helping each other moderate their activities, maybe give each other advice across teams, whereas maybe earlier in the term, it's kind of every team for themselves. So you start seeing teams of teams collaborating and kind of facilitating teamwork across time. I think also by the time they reach ALP, most students, just have more tools to bear to be successful in teams, and so they're seeing the ALP project as kind of the penultimate opportunity to demonstrate their ability to wrangle resources, to jump on a problem that's very complex and messy, and to work with the team that they have to create new value, not only for the company and the client that they're working for, but new value for themselves, right? To validate to themselves that they're able to do something that in the beginning looks very, very difficult and is difficult and challenging, but then they can demonstrate great success at the end.
Thank you. So beyond the benefit to the firm is the benefit to the individual. We have a lot of your cohort photos here, Freddie. There you are on the far left. And so what we've seen from the Economist rankings is 80% of our alums have been promoted or grow their own company within 2 years of graduation as compared to upon graduation. But then we have another number of people that get promoted during the time in the program, with Freddie being an example of that. So from when people enroll to 2 years after graduation, I'd say we see about 95%, if not more, move forward in their careers, and that's why they're doing the program. Salary impact certainly tends to be fairly significant, both while in the program and afterwards as well. So there's both that personal development that happens and being able to move forward in your career, have a greater impact, but then also the financial impact comes as well. To help within this process, we're working with a company that has a career management plan. Their acronym for their target for youth is what they call FIG. 2 years after graduation, what functional area do you want to be in, what industry, and what's your target geography? And having that goal helps you create a plan, evaluate where you are, set a strategy, and then execute on that strategy so that you can work forward towards where you want to be. No one joins our program wanting to do the same thing 3 or 4 years later. Then why do the program? So again, it is that self-development. It may not all be money. Maybe improve what you're doing, and maybe that self-realization Maybe it is to look at other opportunities, maybe to start a firm, your own firm. So many motivations that come together, but in all cases, people wanting to progress forward with their careers. In terms of financing, certainly a question to always be looking at. There's two categories that we encourage you to be considering. One is company support. So most companies provide some financial assistance. At the same time, very few actually provide full support. So if you're looking at joining the program, have those conversations with your HR department, with your supervisor, what type of company support can be provided. I can share that if two or more join from the same company, we're able to provide a 10% tuition reduction through a form of a scholarship. And talk about with your company how what you're learning you can incorporate and share either through brown bags or other approaches within your company. That way there's that broader impact and benefit. Most people will have to pull upon some personal resources, so it could be savings, a long list of different types of loans available as well, and we do also provide some limited scholarship support. In total, what we see is that people through company support, savings, loans, and our own scholarship, we're able to cover the cost of the program, and that's part of our job. It's not inexpensive, but we see it as affordable and has a positive impact for people. If this question is of greater interest to you, then I encourage you to contact Kirsten Reynolds. She works within Purdue's financial aid office, and she is the expert on our programs and how different opportunities for financing may be available to you. In terms of navigating the path, or call it next steps, if you've not submitted your resume for us to share our own impression to fit, I encourage you to do so. We also use that resume review process to determine if a GMAT waiver would be approved for you. If you're looking at other programs, and you should, because you're only going to do an EMBA once, so you want to make sure it is the right fit for you. We'll compare our 2 EMBA programs with up to 3 others and provide you data on about 25 different dimensions that students have said are important to them. As I mentioned, have those discussions internally. Also with your own personal support network. You're going to have to sacrifice to be in the program, but the rewards are going to be for a lifetime. So have that correct planning going on. If you're going to be in our area, so we invite you to come in and attend the class, see what it's like to be an EMBA student, and then we also travel to meet with people. Start creating that financial plan. Our online application is fairly straightforward: a resume, 4 essays, 2 references, transcripts, and an interview with 2 members of our admissions committee. Given some people are quite distant from campus, as Freddy was, we can do the interview through WebEx, the same platform we're using today. So we do all these interactions to, again, give you the information that you need to make sure it's the right fit for you. If you're admitted and you decide to join, I tell people fasten your seatbelt. It is a fun ride. It's a very intense ride, but as well quite rewarding. So here's some deadlines that are coming up. January 8th for priority scholarship review for the IMM Global Executive Program. February 8th, or until the class is filled, is our regular deadline. And then March 24th is when we start the IMM Global EMBA program here at the Purdue campus. And then for our traditional EMBA, July 1st and August 1st are the equivalent deadlines, starting then a week after Labor Day on September 9th. Again, as indicated at the start, I'm Aldas Kriauciunas, Executive Director. I saw our Head of Admissions, Nancy Schmiegel. She was on here earlier, and always willing to take a phone call or to answer any questions you have as well. So those were the main things I wanted to cover. So I thank everyone for joining. I encourage you now to type into the chat box or unmute your mic if you have any questions. As we're waiting for some questions to come in, I have a few that I'm going to ask Freddy. as well. See, the exam never ends, does it? So what was your research process in choosing to do an EMBA program, and how is it you ended up joining our program?
I was very interested in a global EMBA program, so the global aspect was very important for me. And I have, of course, done some research and compared different programs, but I found that there's a difference between global on paper and really global, and I found that Purdue, the Purdue program was the most global one. We visited 7 countries, as you said, in less than 2 years. We had an international student cohort. We had international faculty. The topics that we discussed in class were also always related to global developments. So that was very important for me, and also the aspect that you get 2 degrees from 2 different universities, a North American university and a European university. That was very appealing for me. I work for an American company, but I'm based in Europe, and I now have or will have 2 different degrees from 2 different universities on those 2 continents. So that whole package was very interesting, and then I found that it was it fit my work schedule as well. It was easier for me to take off 2 weeks for the residency than be on campus every weekend or every second weekend. So that whole package made my decision pretty easy in the end.
Okay, thank you. And the next question, for many people, going through the EMBA program is a definite journey, as you've indicated for yourself, and I hear it from others. Sometimes people can also point to a particular idea they were able to implement because of an idea that came up in the program. Has that yet happened for you, or is that something still to come in your career?
No, it has not happened yet that I have a certain model or concept that I was able to apply immediately, or a certain specific idea, but I think it's the overall experience. As I said earlier, I think I manage differently, I lead differently, and that is more important than learning and understanding concepts. So I'm extremely happy with the learning path I took, and I'm sure there will be occasions where I will be able to use some of the concepts as well, but for me this is not so important. The overall general approach, the soft skills were more important, and this is definitely what happened to me. And also the international perspective, again, you go to different countries, and it's different when you read about China, for example, in a newspaper, or hear about it on TV or on the radio. But when you actually are there and see what is happening, you really understand what is going on there. So these skills have definitely helped me already.
Okay, thank you. One more question for Professor Pilotte. So you've worked with a number of our students over the years, definitely. What factors or characteristics would you say lead to success for a person in the program?
Well, I think the first one is patience. Patience with yourself, kind of patience with others, patience in the learning process, which can be quite difficult when you're trying to balance multiple things at one time, right? So you have work coming at you, you have the educational experience coming at you, your personal demands are coming at you, and so how can you be patient when there's all this pressure upon you? But I think, as Freddy put it so well, part of the value of the program is kind of that long view, right? It's not that, each individual item is so important, although it will feel like that in the moment. It's more of the patience to know that over the long haul, it's all of the items that you'll learn in combination, which is kind of where the magic is. So if you can be patient in those moments where maybe you're feeling pressed, or maybe you're not feeling like you're picking up the concepts as quickly as you would like, I think giving yourself and being patient in that regard with your own learning is super important, and being patient with your other colleagues' learning is important. I think the second thing then is thinking about, balancing your life, which necessarily means building trust and delegating to others in every aspect of your life, whether that's your personal life. How do you reorient your personal life so that this additional responsibility doesn't feel overwhelming? As Freddie put, how do you trust and build trust and delegate to your team back at work so that you can have the free space in your mind to be able to immerse yourself in this important residency? And then, within a team, how do you build trust amongst your colleagues so that in those times where maybe, you didn't really grasp all of the content, how can you reach out to your colleagues and say, hey, I'm really not grasping this. Can you help me understand this concept better and really, make a determination to learn as a cohort rather than learn as individuals? I think those two things, building trust, cohort, delegating, and then also being patient through that process, those are really valuable personal attributes, I think.
Excellent, thank you. Question that came in that kind of builds from that, I guess for Freddie. What did you find to be the most challenging part of the program? Assignments, exams, or residency portions? Or all the above?
I think the most challenging is probably the pre-residency. I always enjoyed the residency. And as you said, Alice, it's not sightseeing. It is very challenging. It's a lot of learning and studying and discussing and working in groups. But I always enjoyed that because there you were able to apply the concepts that you learned already. But in general, the most challenging about this program and probably about every EMBA program is the time management. You have to balance the studies, you have to balance work, and you have to balance your friends and your family. This is all important, and all of this has to be balanced. And especially in the pre-residency phase, you have to be disciplined and motivated to do those reading assignments, to do those written assignments. After you're done with work, when you come home, have the late day at the work and still some things that you have to work on the next day, then to really sit down and work on this paper, this requires some motivation. And the same on the weekend and the spare time. You don't really have a lot of spare time, a lot of weekends available for leisure and hobbies. So the time management aspect, I think, is the most challenging. And the pre-residency more than during the residency or in the exam time.
And one more question for Freddie. Can you elaborate on the capstone portion and what your final project was like?
You're talking about the ALP project?
Yes, ALP.
Yeah. We worked with a company, also an international company. The shareholders are Japanese, but the company is based in the Netherlands. And they produce protection equipment for police officers and soldiers, anti-ballistic materials. So when we heard about this, and none of us is active in this industry, we were all a bit surprised and shocked and thought, how should we manage to really advise this company and work with this company? And the idea that they had was a business development idea, and they wanted to get the different opinions on how they can really execute their idea that they had and if this idea is even feasible or not. So it was a very broad objective. It was a company and an industry that none of us was familiar with. So we were a bit shocked at the beginning, but we started to work and talk to this company and figure out what really happens. And then in the end, it's always the same. You have an organization, you want to make money, you have certain processes that are the same. And when you start to really build up the problem on those simple concepts, then you're also able to apply all the models and concepts that are taught during the program. And then it starts to become really fun to work on something like that.
And indeed, we try to, through the consulting capstone ALP, put people outside of their comfort zone. And that's when they realize, okay, I can do work outside of my own industry.
Yeah.
And by looking at another industry, another set of problems as well, it could provide insights to yourself as well. So I see we're at our time limit, so final question for Professor Pilotte and then for Freddy, and then we'll end. What advice would you give to people considering doing an EMBA program?
Well, I guess I'll start, and I'll just say that the advice to look at different programs is good advice. I think, you know, every program that Aldas presented information on for you are unique and different in their own way, and what you're looking for as a student is to find one that's a good match for you. What's going to challenge you in the way that you feel like you need to be challenged, what aligns with your long-term goals, no matter what those are, what will align with your family's goals, and if you need funding from your company, what's going to align with your company goals. So it's really getting that information, really being honest with yourself in those terms, taking a look at the commitment, and then making the best decision you can make along that way. It is about fit and finding a program that's a good fit for you. Every one of the programs that he showed are going to be challenging programs. They're just going to be challenging in different ways. And so you have to also dial your mind in to be prepared for, as he said, a rewarding but very intense ride. And I think once you commit to that, you know, as he demonstrated in the metrics, there's great rewards waiting for you at the end of that.
Thank you. And Freddy, last words for today?
Yeah, I would add to that, only do an EMBA program if you're 100% convinced and motivated. It requires a lot of commitment, a lot of time. So if you're 100% convinced, then do it. If you're not 100% convinced and motivated, then don't do it. And also start to get a real buy-in from your work and your family as well. You need to be upfront with them and tell them, you know, this is a path that takes 2 years, and I require some support, and this is not financial support as in a company sponsorship, but also support in the way that they give you the time to also work on this and take off the time for the residency.
Okay, excellent. So thank you. And just one more thing on what Freddy said. There are bad times to start an EMBA program, but there's never a perfect time. Freddy had both personal major events in his life and at work in that 19-month period. And had someone told him, oh, all this is going to happen in your life, do you still want to do the MBA program? He could have come up with 10 excuses not to. But he did it because it was that commitment more so than anything else that's critical. So again, I thank you, Professor Pilotte, for joining today, Freddy as well. Look forward to seeing both of you during graduation. Thank all the other attendees for today. And again, if you have any questions, either for myself, Nancy, or other questions for either of our two guests today, feel free to contact me and I'll share those onward as well. So with that, I thank everyone. Have a good evening or afternoon, wherever you may be.
Good luck to you all.
Bye. Thank you all.